Well, it's been a depressing week here in Ordure Creek, Wisconsin, my hometown. A day that began with joy and celebration turned to horrible tragedy today. The Green Bay Packers were completely routed in the championship game against the 49ers, plunging the entire state all at once into a depression equaled only by our deep love for the Packers. Everyone was in a fantastic mood all day. More people are in church on Packer Championship Sundays than they are at any other time of the year. Even Dr. Greenberg's family, who are Jewish, attend these sacred holy day services right alongside the Muslim Nassim family, who owns one of the Quick Trip stores in town here. Packer Championship Game Sunday is to Ordure Creek churches what Black Friday is to retailers. Not even Christmas Eve masses and sermons come close, and only Packer Super Bowl Sunday could surpass it. There's a prayer we say before a game. Our Rogers, who art in Lambeau, hallowed be thine arm. Thy bowl will come. It will be won in San Francisco as it is in Lambeau. Give us this Sunday our weekly win, and give us many touchdown passes, but do not let others pass against us. Lead us not into frustration, but deliver us into the valley of the sun. For thine is the MVP, the best of the NFC, and the glory of the Cheeseheads, now and forever. Go, Pack, go. Amen. It's the day to repent and get right with God so he might show favor towards our blessed team before we spend the rest of our day partying and tailgating. We're known for our tailgating rituals, which people tend to mistake as nothing more than a pregame cookout, but in truth it's more of a sacrificial offering, like something out of the Old Testament, a sacrifice of brain cells and arteries, a giving of little pieces of ourselves that prove our devotion. There are a few things we love more than our Packers. If our dear ailing mother were on life support, and to unplug her would somehow guarantee a Super Bowl victory, well, of course we wouldn't do it, but we'd think about it for a moment. After all, there's no need to being so rash in deciding to sacrifice a Super Bowl like that. Even Mom would beg us to let her die in such a case. No one wants to live in a world where they are responsible for keeping the Packers from bringing the Lombardi Trophy back home. What Wisconsin mother could ever look her child in the eyes again after refusing to sacrifice herself to the green and gold? The shame would be too great. Any Wisconsinite would be proud to die under that flag. So everyone is proud and happy and excited, and then the game starts. And then it becomes a terrible night for coffee tables that get flipped, and drywall that gets punched, and remotes that get thrown at TVs. It's a terrible night for any inanimate object that can be kicked, punched, smashed as fan fury is unleashed. Animate objects, like people, fared no better as incidences of domestic disputes were also higher than usual tonight. Domestic disputes are typically common anyway in Ordure Creek. We tend to look down on that kind of thing, but when domestic incidences follow a big Packer game like this, well, people here tend to be a little more forgiving about it. Big Packer game losses are the one time that violence gets a pass, so long as you don't kill anybody. No one blames you. They'll always blame the Packers. Aaron Rodgers may as well have been the one to lay out your old lady for all anyone really cares. Jail cells at the Ordure Creek Police Department fill up pretty quickly on nights like this, and even the police are a little more understanding about everything. Chief Callum has extra officers on staff tonight ahead of the game, knowing that couples around town are going to have to be forcefully separated should the game go south, which it did in dramatic fashion. When the police arrived at the Piffner residence at 12:09 a.m., they found a drunk and naked Jim Piffner screaming himself hoarse and pounding on the front door, threatening to tear it down. He had a deep bruise on the side of his head, dotted with small bleeding cuts, where his wife Deb had clocked him with a large glass-framed picture of Aaron Rodgers and Jordy Nelson celebrating after their Super Bowl 45 win over the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2010. Officers Andrew Slater and Hope Reed calmed the angry man down and put a blanket around him and put him in the back of a warm squad car with a beer. The police always carry extra beer with them on nights like this. Hope went to talk to Deb while Andrew got Jim's side of the story. As it goes, after the game and several drinks, Deb wanted to forget the terrible performance by making love to her husband, who was about to give her a second terrible performance. Jim was neither in the mood nor able to get in the mood due to the crushing Packers' defeat. An argument ensued, things were said, Deborah telling Jim that he plays ball as good as Aaron Rodgers that night, and Jim retorting with things like her holes were as gaping as the holes in the Packers' defense, to which Deborah replied, maybe if he were more well endowed, could actually feel something other than disappointment, like that Packers game, to which Jim responded by putting her on her back, like Aaron Rodgers against the 49ers pass rush. That led to even more harsh words, followed by the picture over Jim's head, and a dazed Jim being pushed out into the cold night without a shred of clothing. And so they had to be separated for the night, and Jim gladly volunteered to be the one to go to jail. He wasn't going back into his house, that's for sure. And the Piffner kids slept right through it. They understood what was happening downstairs. The Packers had lost after all. The next stop of the evening was a noise complaint called in by 74-year-old Mrs. Markham, who wanted the cops to disperse the Packer party next door. It wasn't very loud anymore, but the backyard bonfire was stinking up the place as drunk and disappointed fans from around the neighborhood filed into Jesse Zableski's backyard to add their own flags and jerseys and 3 Aaron Rodgers cardboard cutouts to the growing fire. They would have preferred to burn defensive player cardboard cutouts, but nobody had any. It would have been far more satisfying burning the defensive line in the secondary, but they settled for Aaron Rodgers because, after all, he wasn't a very popular guy tonight either. By the end of the night, there were 26 new people sitting in jail for various domestic incidences, men, women, young and old, and the next day life begins with a new layer of bleakness added onto the gray, depressing Wisconsin winter. Bleakness born of yet another failed Packer championship and the second abysmal blowout championship performance in 4 years. What we need is an apology from our team, an apology for the broken things and the battered people and the ended celebrations, an apology for that awful way they played and the way they let us all down. That's all we really want, an acknowledgement of their shameful play and a promise to do better next year. Then we can all just move on through the rest of this shitty winter in peace. And of course, non-Packer fans won't understand this. After all, we've at least been to 4 championship games in the last 10 years. Only one other NFC team has done that, and that was the very team that so viciously bludgeoned us tonight, the 49ers. So other fans would think that we'd be more forgiving about that. But we're not. This is the frozen tundra, after all. We don't have much else going for us around here during this brutal season of ice other than the Packers. The fire of football glory burns warm in our souls, and when that fire burns out, only then do we truly feel the bitter winter cold settle deep into our bones like the icy grip of death himself. Had the 49ers lost, big deal. Those California fans just have to, drown out their pain with surfing and sunbathing? Those sunny weather people will get no pity from us. We, however, are stuck finding other ways to keep warm, like drinking and fighting and fucking and burning Packer paraphernalia and large bonfires. That's the way of the North. And so the game was over by halftime, but we're Packer fans. We never gave up hope. Drinking became joyless, something seemingly impossible for any Wisconsinite. Only the Packers could take the fun out of drinking. People begin to reassess their lives in dark times like this. What was it all for? What does it all mean? Surely the Packers are God's team. Why would he forsake them in such spectacular fashion? Some get mystical, insisting he doesn't approve of Aaron Rodgers' girlfriend, the famous race car driver Danica Patrick. She's too much of a bad influence on him, they say, teaching him to win Super Bowls like she wins races, which is never. By the next day, things have calmed down into a sad, heavy feeling that just sits on top of our souls. Few can pull themselves out of bed to even go to work on Monday morning, not due to the intense hangovers rocking bellies and brains. We do that all the time in Wisconsin. Alcohol's as much a part of our diets as dairy products and meat, so we're never too hungover for work. It's just that our souls are bloated with grief, as though a loved one had passed away, or a best friend perhaps, or a parent. That's how it feels when the Packers don't win the championship game. Like your heart has been torn from your chest, and all you can really do is go back to sleep. Or if you do get up to take on the post-Packer loss day, you'll need to start drinking again immediately. For those who will actually pull themselves from the warm bed and drag themselves into work, already know that there won't be any work getting done. And those who won't be getting any work done will instead spend the day complaining and explaining and examining every single player mistake that was made, every bad coaching call, how the offensive line and run defense needs to be shored up for the 2020 campaign, and we all console ourselves in the knowledge that we'll be back next year. Stay tuned for Super Bowl 55. There's no question the Packers will be there. The only question is, who are they going to be playing? And since you're not going to go to work anyway, you may as well head over to the Ordure Creek jail and pick up your loved ones who were swept up in the emotional chaos that ensued the night before. Andy Swenson walks in with a face that looks as though he'd been attacked by a bear to pick up his wife, Andrea. Andrea, petite, very kind to children and animals, tends to be a little irate after every Packer loss, but especially so in the big games. After the loss to the Atlanta Falcons 2 years ago, Andrea had burned down Dr. Greenberg's garage after too many high lifes because in the dark she had mistaken the American Eagle decal on the front of the garage for a falcon, and more specifically, a falcon from Georgia. This resulted in a subsequent arrest and parole, the conditions of which she had to attend counseling sessions to manage her Packer rage, along with 36 other Ordure Creek residents who also ended up in the same place after that Atlanta Falcons game. And Dr. Greenberg didn't press any criminal charges because, after all, the Packers had lost. It had been 2 years, and Andy thought that she was cured of her Packer rage, and even after the game, she seemed no more than mildly annoyed. But it was when she went to the bathroom, and there on the seat was a single, solitary piss driblet left by Andy. And that lone piss driblet sent her into a rage, unleashing 2 years of pent-up anger that left Andy's face adorned with deep red blood-clotted stripes after a vicious slashing with her nails. The ensuing tornado of rage prompted the neighbors to call the police, who arrived and had to tase the crazed, out-of-control woman. As Andy sat there waiting for his wife to be released, he was greeted by one of the waitresses from the local Chili's where he and Andrea often ate. Angie Borntrigger, one of the notoriously prettiest girls in Ordure Creek, voluptuous, Wisconsin thick hips that could bear you a litter of little cheeseheads, long blonde hair with curls cascading over strong but feminine shoulders, and a left eye swollen shut and leaking, pussing tears. They had run into each other in this very spot after the 2017 Falcons loss, too. Same time, same place. "Hey, Andy," she greeted. There's a fraction of a moment where they're scanning each other's battle wounds, Andy a fraction quicker, having both of his eyes available to him, before Angie settles into a chair in the jail's waiting room next to him. "Here for Andrea?" she asks. "Yep." "Here for Seth?" he asked. "Yep." They looked down at their feet in quiet contemplation of the night before that brought them here now, but neither of them are thinking about being on the receiving end of abuse. They were just so disappointed that the Packers failed to get to the Super Bowl for a third straight time. That's what hurt the most. They would bear these wounds for a few days until they healed. They'd go on with their lives as normal people everywhere else in the world, but the wounds of that Packer loss would linger for months, at least until summer. Angie remarked with a nod towards Andy's striped face. Andrea looks like she was a little more pissed off this time. Yeah, she was, Andy replied. But I get it, you know? Aaron Rodgers only has about 4 more really good years left, and I think we're all just feeling the strain of no Super Bowls. Angie agreed. Yeah, we are. Andy nodded towards the woman's ugly, swollen eye. Looks like Seth took the loss a little better this time. Yeah, he did, she replied. He didn't even break anything this time. I'm really proud of the progress he's making. He's really growing as a person. But I only got this after I stabbed him in the back of the shoulder. Oh, wow, Andy remarked. Yeah, Angie shrugged. I probably would have stabbed him again if he didn't lay me out right away. He's a Marine vet, so he's got some great reflexes. Got me before I could give him another poke, left the knife stuck in him. Andy shook his head. Damn. So he had to go to the hospital before they brought him here. Yep, 32 stitches. Huh. They fell back into momentary silence, looking at their feet, waiting for their significant others to be processed for release. Wounded, battered, victims of violence. But all they could think about was that gosh darn Packer loss. Angie shook her head. Packers really got to get their shit together, eh? And that's the latest from Ordure Creek, Wisconsin this week, where the beer is thick and the cheese is fresh and the Packers are absolute dog shit.